In this video we're going to see the shadow catcher surface type, which allows us to get both shadows and reflections out of a scene in order for overlaying them onto background images. This is going to be most useful in compositing when we've got a background image here, or when we've got a background to insert in visual effects or something like that, and we need our objects to cast shadows either onto ground or other objects that we've modelled to match the background in order to tie it all in to the image as a whole. So in this case I've just got a simple HDRI wraparound spherical background, right, and I've got this item here which can sort of be sat on the road. It might not be lined up for perspective perfectly, but close enough for our purposes. So what we do is we throw in some geometry that would act as the background itself. In this case I've just got a plane here that would be the ground, and you can see that it's catching a shadow there, of course, but also it has a slight reflection to it, slight specular reflection of our item. If we pop open the surface editor, then we can see our options. First, let me just show you the sort of naive way of doing this, which is also the more old-fashioned and traditional way, and that's to use the alpha channel here. So the surface for your ground, here I've got it as a blue, slightly reflective surface, whatever. Normally you would just put this to black or whatever you intended your shadow colour to be, and you would change the alpha channel to shadow density. Now ordinarily you would see no difference in your render. However, if you look at the actual alpha, then you see that the alpha for that plane is now just where the shadow is falling. So in that way you could take this alpha channel into a compositor and you could use it either with the plane render itself or with just a block colour to blend shadow on top of your background footage. However, what we also have, if we go to shading model, is we have the shadow catcher shading model here. When we turn that on, you can see what we get. The plane effectively disappears and we have the shadow projected in here, almost as if we'd done the alpha clipping trick. It's sort of all integrated like this. Now it isn't only the shadow that is being captured here, it is also the reflection. It's just a little hard to see in this scene because the background here is so bright as compared to the reflection. But if we just toggle the background off for a minute, then we can see, of course, there is the reflection in our shadow catcher material. If we just flick on the gradient backdrop, which is a little bit dimmer, then you can just there make out the reflection as well, of course, as the shadow itself. You can also see this appearing if we come to the specular buffer here that allows us to see the reflection. Then of course there is the reflection, and so again rendered out two separate buffers. This can be added on top of your background and that will give you the reflection included there. Interestingly, note that if we look at the alpha channel, then it's basically done the same thing as we had with the alpha option, in so much that the alpha of the shadow catcher object only includes where the shadows are falling. You can of course tweak your shadow color here if you're wanting to get a different coloration into the shadows. You can do it there, or of course you can do it with the light shadow color option. Either of those is available. And you'll also notice that the backdrop mode has two modes here, environment and backdrop image. When using environment, as we are here, then it uses whatever is in the backdrop setting here, be that the gradient or solid color or textured environment or what have you. When we set this to backdrop image, then the sort of image that the shadow catcher picks up for its material is whatever was set here in the background image in the compositing tab. You notice that looks a little weird here. That is because the background image of compositing only works from camera view, and of course if we switch to a camera view, then there's that image thrown into the background, and you can see shadow catcher is picking that out, even though the actual boundaries of the plane aren't encompassing the entire area here. the plane, as you can see, is still only extending out to there. But the projection of the image onto this plane is of course from the camera. That's why if we look at it here, you see that's where the edge of the plane is in the camera view with respect to the image that's there in the backdrop. So there we have it. That's the shadow catcher and the options that we have for capturing shadows cast onto geometry within a scene so that we can then use those shadows in a compositing environment or VFX pipeline in order to get our main rendered objects properly integrated into the background images or filmed footage that we have for them.